Hello, welcome to the podcast from Duendelvin. I'm Corbin, and today we're going to be exploring the world of Savarion. This is Jeff and Kyle, and today we're talking about our halflings. We're good? Oh. Sorry. I was like, what are you doing? Okay, today we're going to be talking about the halflings, so yeah. What are halflings? For people who don't know.
Halflings are basically like short human elf kind of creatures. I don't know. Their average height is about 4 feet or a little less.
They're our shortest race.
They're our shortest race.
They're like three. They're like almost like 6-year-old kid size.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and I know like obviously kids have different height, but they are effectively from a distance they would be hard to tell from children.
So they're like just little people.
A little bit, yeah, but proportionately little.
If
Yeah.
you were in another race
Yeah.
that isn't that short, but
Yeah.
so
All right. We had some camera rotation shenanigans.
Oh, wow.
One of the
Okay.
cameras got bumped. I don't know.
Bumped, yeah.
I think it just got bumped.
All right.
Um,
Well, are they...
all right. I'm gonna fix it real quick. You guys
Yeah.
keep going.
Okay. Are they a matriarchy or a patriarchy?
Definitely a matriarchy. Our halflings are all the major players in the world of the halflings are female.
That's great.
It's also kind of fun because they're our most militaristic race. They were. We'll get to that kind of what their purpose was, but because they're fully militaristic, and all their generals are female.
Okay.
Yeah, their army is mixed. They don't have a problem if you're martial in capability. If you want to join the army, they're not going to say no, bro. You're a guy. Get out of here. This is a ladies only club. They didn't like that. And there can be leadership that is male, but generally the highest positions of leadership within the military and the core structure are run by female. Then you have like the civics are generally males. They kind of run the logistics. They run the like the day-to-day, the structure, make sure that there's enough supplies. That's what the men handle in this halfling society.
Okay.
And so much so that all three of the major players that are named as of this moment that are like a big deal. We have the very first one was part of the Keepers, was a female. The was Duendelvin,
Which
actually,
is our
the
namesake
writer.
for the podcast.
Yeah.
Oh.
The name of the podcast, yeah. So Duendelvin's a female.
Mhm.
The first one that fought Vagog was also a female.
Yep.
And then the most notable one during the time of the fall was Sirona, also female. So, yes.
She's got a song.
I sing it quite often when we talk about the halflings. It pops into my head, and I only know the one line.
My Sirona.
That's it.
Where do they live?
They live in a desert.
The desert?
They are our desert dwellers. They don't have walls in their city. It'll be a foolish endeavor to try and attack the halflings if you aren't prepared, because the desert was massive, and you had to be intentional in your travel to get there, or they had to send somebody to guide you in to get to their home. What is the name of their capital, though?
Shota.
Shota. Thank you. I was like, it's not Siduri, it's not Saluth. I'm going through all the different names. Shota.
Apparently we have a lot of S's.
We do. This is a good set of names. There's S. Like, S makes great city names.
Halflings are snakes.
No. Kind
Well,
of
they
not.
just Serona,
Yeah.
other stuff that I forgot.
But
Uh,
they're desert dwelling people, and we have a group of people called Arcanists. So water is never really a problem, because if they have a need, Arcanists come in and there are water mages, and they will actually help create well springs. And so if the halflings wanted to build a new city, they could actually contact an Arcanist troop that would come in and help them build a wellspring to support that city in the desert. So they create small oases. They have to do it in limitation because you do too much water in the desert, you don't have desert anymore, and you need desert still. Like, it's part of their natural defense structure, like we talked about. You don't just march into Shota and be like, "We're here to take you down, you little ladies."
Right.
One does not simply march into Shota.
Yeah, so they have like the buildings around. So it is a city. The actual Shota is in like an oasis area. And so, yeah, it has like battlegrounds or parade grounds. And then your like city portion of it. And I'll show a picture. But
Heck yeah.
so, yeah.
All right. What is, like, why are they different from other halflings? Because I know, like, other big companies have halflings in games, board games.
I do a lot of fantasy reading. Do you want me to field this one? Because
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Oh man, so a lot of other halflings I love the race, especially going back to D&D. Like, I used to read Dragonlance, and I love the Dragonlance. The halfling concept there was that they were wild, crazy, erratic, and full of adventure and very short-lived. The only thing we kept is that ours are short-lived. Halflings and other races tend to be more nimble, agile, and rely on their wits and their cunning and fight from a distance. We don't do that with our halflings. Our halflings are going to be just as efficient in your face and more terrifying. They are literally the best fighting force that the world of Savarion has to offer.
They're little tanks.
They're little monsters, man. Like, they're terrifying. Call them an ankle biter if you want. You'll be looking at them from the floor up. It's nuts. They'll take you down.
Call them an ankle biter. You don't have ankles anymore. They bit them off.
So they are agile. They are quick, but they're martially terrifying, and they are strong. Like, yeah, size is still going to make a huge play. Like, if you wanted to pick up a halfling and toss them, it's something you could do, but you will regret it. That's if they let you touch them. That's also kind of a concept there. It's like if they're going to let you, like, pick them up and bodily yeet them at somebody. But that's one of the major differences is they're intentional, they're militaristic, they are organized, they are structured, they are terrifying as a military force. They're also, they have an innate battle sense. I think this one kind of coincides with other halflings as well, but you can't surprise a halfling. They're always prepared. They live in fight or flight mode effectively. They don't have a flight mode. It's all fight. They live in fight mode. So we have the RPG that we talked about a little bit in the last episode and things that we're building. Our halflings do not get surprised in a surprise round. They're just like, yeah, nah, I saw this coming. I can still do things.
I've been waiting for this moment.
Kind of, yeah. It's just in their innate nature. That's just kind of how they are.
They also are immune to alcohol, so they can't get drunk. So that's a little bit. I don't think there's any race anywhere that has the capability to like not get drunk under any circumstance. But
Probably is some, but it's not widely known.
yeah, but halflings just don't. It's part of their whole always aware, permanently aware status that they have. So yeah,
We talked about it briefly on the elf episode. Do you want to dive more into the berries?
the berries.
Their wine
It's
berries.
It's
the
their god
wine
gift.
the cave berries.
Yeah. That was a gift given to them.
Yeah. So there's a cavern system that is underneath Shota, and in that cavern system, it grows the berries. So they actually grow underground, not above ground. And the berries themselves have an alcoholic property to them that the halflings are immune to. And when they feed them to the other races, when they come, they get drunk. They get like super drunk and act crazy, which is one of the reasons the halflings were like, we ate all of you. You're all really dumb. But the berry not only is a drink, but it's a sustaining berry. So it can, like, you could put a bunch of them in your pouch and like go traveling with them and eat them as you go, and they would sustain your life. So they're a really delicious berry, but they're also life sustaining. So you can consume them to stay alive forever.
And they have a long shelf life. It's why they were alcoholic in the first place.
Right.
They don't really spoil. It takes a long, more longs.
Long.
Yep.
So a collector would have a prize thing to have a spoiled berry.
It would be like, this is my spoiled berry.
Well, it's like, and you think rum,
Yeah.
it was taken on ships in our world. You take rum because it never spoils.
And
right?
you mix it into the water to purify it and make grog.
Right.
But also,
Yeah, and so the berry is your rum.
Yeah.
but
You just
fully
take it wherever you go.
fully life sustaining.
Because I love it. Because the berry also, it's so you don't get tired of it, and that's what he's talking about. It's just delicious because it helps to. This is part of the god property. It will help satiate whatever craving that you have for a food or a flavor. So if you want something sour, that berry is going to be some sour alcohol. You can get some Sour Patch alcohol. You know,
I'm in the mood for something salty.
yep,
But like a
Seawater.
bread, like a pretzel.
yeah. You just
That
that's
sounds
pretzel-y.
amazing.
right.
'Cause
I
if you
wish.
just have these on hand, it's like, well, shoot, I want a sub sandwich.
Except because of their ability to be longevity, they're highly alcoholic.
Yep.
So unless you're a halfling eating a berry, you'd be.
For some people, that's a double bonus.
That's true. Yeah.
Now, I will say too, halflings eventually kind of lose that immunity to alcohol as the years go by, because they're no longer consistently subsisting off of that one berry all alone. After the affirmation, either the cave system is lost or the berry, so they end up distilling alcohol. But we talk about like you can get drunk as a halfling in the role playing game. Like
Yeah.
they have lost that immunity to alcohol, and it has to do with they're no longer just consuming these berries as a daily appetite.
Right.
So they aren't immune. They were just consistently used to it.
Well, they were built that way that they were immune, but over time and lack of exposure, they lost that immunity.
And the corruption of it
Yep.
all.
And the
The
corruption.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Yeah. I'm gonna corrupt you. You can be drunk now.
It's kind of a huge detriment. They're no longer able to partake of their god gift. That corruption actually did a number on every single race because a lot of them lost their ability to have that remnant of the god's creation of them. It would be like I don't have a good comparison. Almost so it's like be like losing the Bible, but I don't think that's even quite applicable because they still have religious text. It's just all been mostly destroyed and
Burned.
yep, and they've been replaced during the affirmation with "Here are your new gods, follow us or die."
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know that there's a good
it
comparison.
really isn't.
There probably is.
I can't think of one on the top of my head, which is not normal.
So. But
But yeah, it was a huge detriment to think about. Like the only god building that sustained truthfully, that's a testament to there being a creation, was Kungan and the Horakai. Well, I guess there's also the swamps, and we have the clock, but the clock is lost. No one knows where it is.
it didn't actually
get
go
destroyed.
away.
But like it's been lost to the people.
Right. Yeah.
But if you find a timepiece, it's still it's actually kind of cool. Like considering the fact that a watch would be a relic of the past, that's really considered high technology, like a golden age thing to have a watch.
Right. But the swamp survives in pieces.
Yes.
So
Well, the swamp is like the ground. You can't really get rid of it.
Well, I mean, when the world is cracked into pieces and the water comes rushing in, you can drown a swamp.
yeah.
Yeah.
But because of its divine healing properties on itself,
If there's
that
a
specific swamp wouldn't die.
that's fair.
a specific swamp.
Bukoa used it as testing grounds. She annihilated the elves. How would it die from the world breaking apart?
I mean, if there's no more world, I guess you can. If we actually were to
If
break,
there's no more world, there's nothing else to do.
if we were to destroy Savarion and there was like space for it to float through, then yeah, you would have pieces of rock that would just be pure swamp, sustaining in zero with no.
And like
Little-
Kungan.
Just Kungan on a piece of. It would eventually you put rocket boosters on a piece of land, like a piece of rock, and you turn Kungan into a flying fortress,
There you
Oh
go.
my goodness.
space fortress.
Yeah, and it's like,
We
look,
went-
it's part of the swamp.
Speaking of space, we went way into space on this one. I
Yeah, we did
apologize.
a little bit.
Oh, man.
Let's get back to the halflings. Let's get back to the halflings.
So
Yeah.
you got their divine gift. What is their divine purpose?
So their divine purpose was like think negotiator, judge, that kind of so their divine purpose was to mitigate between, right? So remember we talked about the humans were like if you needed something done, you need to go to the halflings, and then the humans made it relevant, right? If there was conflict, the halflings actually served as like the tribunal, if that makes sense. So they're the race that was responsible for protecting the sanctity of the different races and their individuality, and protecting like trades and negotiations and stuff like that.
They were
like
peacekeepers.
the judge and jury?
Peacekeepers. Huh?
Would they be like the judge and jury in conflict?
They would, yes. They would also feel that if you went to the halflings,
Yeah.
which if it was two separate races trying to solve something from a legal perspective, you would choose the halflings.
Which you don't want to not have gone to the halflings. Thinking about that, like having to force the halflings to come to you is a big boo boo,
Right.
because they're going to come with the army. Like a detachment of one of their armies is going to come and effectively be the sit down. It's like having mom mode activate.
And so if you
Angry
needed a
mama.
caravan
Yes,
protected,
mm-hmm.
you would call the halflings
Absolutely.
because they're the ones that were specifically for protecting and negotiating and keeping peace and stuff like that.
Well, because you have the orc who are designed to protect the people, and the halflings were designed to protect the peace.
Right.
So the orcs would help facilitate that as well. Like actually, the orcs and the halflings have a very symbiotic and not really contentious relationship because they have a better understanding based on their divine purposes than the other races would have. Except you send an orc to a halfling city for a negotiation, and you give them a berry, they're going to get drunk and act a fool regardless. It's just unfortunate.
Right. But the orcs are really the only ones who didn't have like beef with anyone.
True.
Whereas because the halflings specifically were designed to keep peace and maintain that, they would have been the first ones that were like, you guys are screwing up, we have to step in and take over. Mm-hmm. And it was actually Serona during the fall who initiated the fight and said, okay, you guys can't do this, we're going to take over completely. She was the one that started all of that.
That is true.
And in addition to that, they were one of like the halflings and the Samgatu, and then Clat
And his support people.
and a couple of his support people, but the orcs not. Just,
The orcs
as
just
a
Clat.
as an army, a standing army, the Samgatu and the halflings were the only ones that still had a standing army when the underworld broke up through and started attacking. And so the fact that Serona initiated the fight,
and then sustained throughout the entirety of.
right, they were in the fight the longest
Mhm.
and lasted the longest. So
They were dirty opportunists too because they got powerful fast. They
They
knew.
went in and stole the elves.
They didn't steal the elves. They definitely finished them off. But yeah,
well, yeah, so the
Crow was trying to
Muskeper,
kill them, and they went, "Nuh-uh."
when they launched the war campaign, the Muskeperts marched on
elves.
Zedge, the
Yep.
elves, and pulled them out of their place and put them in the grove and had a fight and then had to leave because they couldn't handle it. And the halflings marched in at that moment and finished out the elves and took the elves' power and then went and wiped out the Muskepert.
No,
like
I thought goblins got Muscapert because they caught them in a blizzard. They didn't actually make it to the Muscapert.
You're right.
Goblins caught them.
You're right.
Yep.
The halflings took out like a couple of the
Yep, I
different
think-
races.
The halflings ended up popping somebody that had a couple of other, like, had eliminated some other races, and they inherited all of those racial passes that the other races had acquired. So they would let some other
Tiny
people.
people just got scarier.
Yeah, no, they let some people handle their light work, and then they were like, "Okay, you did a good job, humans. Now gimme."
Right.
Yep.
And if anybody could handle the underworld, the closest fight would have been what it actually ended up being. Because with Serona and her halflings, and then Nyakuadia and her battle sense and her ability at the helm of strategy, that would have been the most powerful.
If Kawadia and Serena worked together the whole time, that war would have been over so
It had just
fast.
been the two
But
of them.
it couldn't because again, we don't talk this. We can talk about this in the story. When you went to the halflings and you entreated them, the halflings got sick and tired of being disrespected because people would come to their city and they would be given this divine gift to consume as part of their meal, and then they'd be acting ridiculous and treat the halflings with an insane amount of disrespect and lack of decorum. So like the halflings eventually got tired, and every single race would come to them and act a fool because alcohol, and they didn't understand it. The halflings had no concept
Because alcohol didn't exist then.
well, it did, but they didn't have any effect on them. So like no one else. But yes, you're right. No one else was consuming alcohol. No one else knew about this concept, and so everyone was just like, I don't know, man. Like I went to the halflings and I don't remember
Desert
anything.
makes me loopy, dude.
Yeah, pretty much. There's a whole thing about like the halflings were insulted consistently, and we have a question in the back there, and it's kind of fun. I see. Oh no, it's just someone asking if they can be a halfling in real life. No.
What did Sarah say? I can't.
Can I
remember.
be a halfling in real life?
Oh, that's what.
That was
Sarah
my
said.
wife.
No,
Okay.
you're not late. You're just not early either.
You're not a wizard. I don't know. Maybe you are a wizard. I can't tell if you're a wizard or not.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you can adopt a lot of their tenants. I don't have a problem with that.
You're a little too big to be a halfling. Like,
Tall.
Yeah, tall is the better
Tall?
phrase. Yeah, tall is the better phrase.
Tall is a
You're
better phrase.
larger than a halfling would be. I don't know. You're tall.
Yes.
You're like 2 feet taller than they are.
Oh man.
But yeah,
So, any other questions on the divine purpose?
What was their purpose after the fall? Because I know they do play into that a little
So it's
bit.
interesting at the beginning, at the very early stages of the affirmation, the halflings actually started a corps of
halfling
like
only.
police officers, and they traveled the war. They ran like the police for the whole world until the nation started building themselves up and becoming their own governing bodies. The halflings ran that for a long time.
They took
and
the
then-
brunt of like keeping everyone else safe so they could develop.
Right. And then after that, when all the nations could manage themselves and the halflings weren't needed in that respect anymore, they became the caravanners. So we talked about the dwarven pirates were the dwarves were the only ones that could sail the ocean.
And then the Goblin Traders
then-
Guild.
Right. The goblins became the traders, and the halflings ran the caravans. So basically the same thing that the dwarves did in the water, the halflings did on land. So
So if you wanted to be a caravan guard, you would go sign up with the caravanners in the affirmation, after the affirmation. And then way after the affirmation, we're talking like what 50 to
Couple hundred
50 100 years
Does
for
the
the
Lothian Guard
empires.
still exist?
Lothian Guard came up after. They kind of took that place because they started fighting the underworld breaches. So the
Okay.
Lothian Guard was built up in the space that the halflings created.
but they didn't serve as a police force.
They have a specific intended purpose.
No, they were the keeper of the gates of hell.
Effectively, yes. Gatewatch would be a good way to look at them, or the oh
They're
gosh,
Cerberus.
We're gonna run a series on
The
like the different factions that exist within Savarion, but the Lurithian Guard are a big deal after all the nations have kind of settled and become so.
But yeah. That was a good question. They played a huge role in allowing the space for the empires to form and build. Because we don't talk about this a whole lot. When you have that kind of crazy magic that happens, and you're shattering the world, and you're isolating people and kind of forcing them to come together, and you've just decimated armies, that wild magic also comes in. We created these undead creatures in the aftermath of these battles, where they're just essence-hungry monsters that use body parts to keep themselves together. Arls, yes. And they were terrifying, and no one was able, like, if you were under-equipped and incapable, they would come and wipe out, and you'd have whole villages that tried to pop up get wiped out by Arls overnight.
Yeah.
And the halflings took on that brunt and clashed with them and kept them down for a very long time. And that's when we talk about they created that space. They came in and they wiped out Arl infestations at their own life, at the cost of their lives, because they were able to fulfill their divine purpose in a more positive role.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do they have any like notable creations? Like, did they build stuff, or were they kind of just, I make big army, I send big army to go do army stuff?
I mean, they had their own craftsmen, but it wasn't anything super notable as far as what they created. They did develop fighting techniques. The archer concept that we have for our role-playing game, or our board game, the I hit you once and then I shoot you again if I hit you, is a Serona invention. She developed the skill sets and taught the skill sets necessary for people to be able to fight that way with the bow and arrow, because that was her preferred method. She was a terrifying archer on the field. Quick, accurate, and fast. I mean, quick, just said, but like she's like a blur, just firing multiple arrows with one bowstring twang. It felt like, and yeah. So the actual way it plays out is whenever you shoot with the archer in the board game, if you hit your target, you get to attack them a second time. So
Yep.
they have the potential to do more damage, but there's always an iffy. And if you hit your target, kill them, and there's another one close by, you can actually change target and hit somebody else that's near them.
Yeah, I played an archer a little bit, and I annoyed Dad so
In the
much.
role-playing game, yep.
Yeah,
Our ranger.
it's so fun with the things you can do. We're fighting Arls, and I just climbed into a mountain and started shooting them, and I crippled them all. It was so funny how frustrated he got.
From that time frame when you played, the ranger has undergone massive changes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's become a lot more useful,
Well,
and
it was always useful, but definitely more versatile.
it's more versatile because what it used to be is you'd sit in the back and shoot, but now there's more you can do.
Yeah, there is. It's so filthy. There's different styles. We're not going to go into that. I want to talk about that, but that's. I will not take us to space again.
Seems like the halflings are doing that today.
You guys don't want to fly Kungan? What's wrong with you? How long do they live?
80 years. They had the shortest lifespan of any of our races, naturally.
Okay.
So they're short-lived, and
Fast.
aggressive.
They learn quickly. Their maturity rate, because they have such a short life, is actually, I think, a little faster than the other races. Like, I figure you would considered full grown at like 14, 13, you would be an adult.
Yep.
So your development is sped up to compensate for the lack of long life. And that's kind of necessary because having someone with the martial prowess live long enough to become like the Duendelvin, there's a reason Duendelvin's a force to be reckoned with. She is terrifyingly awesome.
Yeah, when the tiny person who lives short and is powerful lives forever, that's even worse.
Exactly.
Well, then, and they wouldn't really have smiths the same way that a lot of the other nations would, but because of their divine purpose and their role and everything, they would acquire weapons from other races. And so it
Goblin
wouldn't be
Goblins,
uncommon that halflings would have
Better
goblin
gear.
weapons.
Yep.
That would be a normal state. So, and then to caveat on what Kyle said about Duendelvin in the future, I'm going to try not to go into space too, but because Duendelvin's one of the named characters, and she survives from like the beginning of the war, the 1,000-Year War, all the way until she like gives herself up to die because she's like, all right, I'm done. She lives through all the way through to the Affirmation, all the way through the Age of Expansion, all the way through the Age of the Godless, and then dies during the Age of the Gods.
Yep, she leads the charge in the Age of the
Right.
Godless. She's like, all right, I like this. There needs to be no more God influence.
Right. And so she actually, before she goes and gets Clat, his soul back to his body, to repurpose him for his, like, for her, what she's trying to do, she actually cleans out, leads an army that she spearheads, cleans out the overworld. So the gods of the overworld, she leads the charge against and clears it out.
No
And
more
then-
sprites, no more Comitai, no more Coriatii.
Right, they're all gone. And then uses Clat to help clean out the underworld. So the two of them, obviously with an army, but the two of them spearhead the fight against the underworld. And so Duendelvin legitimately wipes out the nation's power and the overworld and the underworld as the tip of the spear of that fight.
Was she the one who took out the dragons?
No. The dragons, the Empire, she kind of let the empires handle the dragons. The way the
No.
story goes is they tried and they failed. They sent armies after the dragons and the dragons decimated them. They had to build small teams to go and execute
Right, but
the dragons.
Duendelvin commissioned those teams.
Yes, she's the one that figured out that, okay, you can't just throw armies at these things. They were designed to level nations.
Yeah.
So
Because at that point, she had done all of that, and then she takes over the City of the Wise as her capital.
that's the capital of the world at that point.
And then she starts governing. And then the four dragons, she commissions teams to go get them.
There's also a period of time after the Underworld's cleansed where she and Clat differ heavily to the point that Clat leads us this very successful conflict, like a rebellion against Duendelvin before they come to a reconciliation. And I think we have them actually end up becoming an item. Like they become a couple and rule the world together, if I remember this right.
I don't remember that being
Oh,
something
we had
you
a
and I
lot
talked
of
about.
conversations going like so it's entirely possible lost in one of those, but I think we
They're
ended up
both
having them
really
be a thing.
important.
Yes, it would make sense that she would be more akin to him, but he would also remember the time where Parvulcan lived among the people and still have the idea that faith is necessary kind of deal. And she is very much. I've also remember those days, and they were worthless.
Right.
And so
I wasn't dead.
they would fight and have ideological conflicts, but they'd also have physical conflicts for a while before Clat was like, okay, yeah, no, this is better.
She's been around the block a few times.
So would he.
Yeah, but not as many times as she has.
Yep. So yeah,
I said she.
he did.
Oh, yes.
And Clat was kind of stuck. He couldn't explore the world and experience things like
He was
she could.
stuck in the port.
His body
He was
was
stuck on the wall. No.
His body was stuck in Kungan. He couldn't really leave it, and his soul was trapped in the underworld. So he was split. He was a half-life for most of his life.
Yes. So he could communicate with creatures of the underworld and the creatures that went to Kungan for your like travel back to Mecca kind of mentality that orcs would do, because Kungan still stood and you could still talk to interact with your ancestors and stuff. Like it was still
committed to the orc afterlife.
Right. That could still happen. And so Clat would be wandering around there, but outside of the walls of Kungan, Clat couldn't go. So
he was limited to what people brought him of information. If they were willing to share, he could listen and eavesdrop.
About that.
A poem.
Outside of the walls of Kungan, Clat could not go.
So
Trapped in two places at once. Something.
Hey, we can work on it.
Yeah.
We can riff it off a little bit.
let's do it.
The poem of
So
Clat.
yeah, back into the halfling world.
Back into that.
Yeah, we're back.
It wasn't as far into space as we thought it was going to go. It's all good.
Duendelvin is everywhere, and she's part of the halflings. So technically, everywhere is part of the halflings.
And that is fair. She's also the one that scribes history. She had the gift to be able to see events through the eyes of the people that experienced it, and that's
Which isn't exactly the same as telling the story of the halflings.
no.
She just gets to tell the story of everybody else.
But it also gave her unique insight as far as to how, like, it makes sense why she would rule the world because she's seen everybody's perspective. She has a better insight, and based on the halfling's divine purpose, it made sense to give it to her. It also made her really, really good. She could end conflict without battle if she wanted to, because she could negotiate such a ferocious position, since she understood everybody way better. Like, I feel like the only one that she'd have a mental sparring match with would be Nyquadia, but she
Because her
gone.
brain's
Yeah.
all over the place.
Well, because Nyquadia also had the same insight, but not as long lived, and so Nyquadia and like Duendelvin in a debate would be
That would be fun to watch.
That
yeah.
would be very interesting to watch. It would
I was going for
go
like
on forever.
unstoppable force meets immovable object kind of concept.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody budging. All right, so yeah. What else you got for us on them halflings? Because I went to space again. I apologize.
That's fine. History?
I
What do you
mean, historically, there's really, we kind of talked a little bit about it. Like, if there was a conflict that needed handling, the halflings handled it. So they were in everybody's business. There was a conflict that happened before the 1,000-year war. Halflings handled it. During the 1,000-year war, it would almost be like if the halflings showed up, all conflict would cease, and you'd have to like double team the halflings unless you wanted to get wrecked.
Oh, shoot. Halflings here.
Yeah, the halfling army has arrived, like, terrifying. So if you had a battle of three armies from the Hobbit kind of concept, and then all of a sudden here comes rolling up the halflings to kind of stir the pot, then everyone's like, not today. So you'd have the elves, the dwarves, and the goblins be like, get out of here, halflings.
My bad.
And the halflings would put up a fight that was phenomenal. Like, it would need all three armies, even if they were fresh. It wouldn't be like a walk in the park. Halflings are a terrifying force.
Yeah. How does their government work? We talk about that.
Oh.
So the halflings are militaristically governed. So they would be like governed to the way that a military is structured. So you have your general, and then your main general, and then your generals underneath, and then your officers and you're enlisted. But your government structure, the power, the authority of the government itself would be run like a military. So Serona at the time of the fall, so that's when we have all our key named people, would have been the head general. And so like if
Title is the Acer.
the Acer, yeah. So if we were in a military situation, right, standing in like a fighting area, ready to go to war, the general says something and you, how high, sir? That kind of mentality. Their entire government is run that way, as if they are constantly at war. So
Okay. So they're just the war people.
Yeah.
It would very much be an earned position. Like, you don't become the general because your dad was the general or your mom was the general in this situation. You become the general because you've earned it.
Your military prowess speaks for your your progress.
Yep.
So there's no like
There's no bloodline.
monarchy
Yeah, it's not a monarchy.
thing. So it's like your mom may be the general, but you just joined. You're at the bottom.
Exactly. And odds are somebody whose
Family is
high ranking, you would be too, just because you have more experience connected to that leadership. And so your odds would be better because you're familiar with that style. Whereas if, my family, my mom had died in a conflict early on and my dad was, at home making, cookies every day. And so like as a young girl, I grow up and like that's what I know. I'm probably not going to make it as far as Serona's daughter would, just because of familiarity with location and
I'm gonna be the general who knows how to cook cookies.
Nothing wrong with cookies. I love me some cookies.
Cookies
You
are
would
good.
love to be a halfling who just sat at home and made cookies all day.
I'd love to be
like
a
your
human
thing.
that sat at home and made cookies all day.
I mean, y'all can bake away. I love to cook. Cooking and baking.
I do
Yeah.
too.
That's
I love
like
it.
your thing, though. Cookies are your specialty.
I know. That's why I said the dad at home making cookies. So
The wishful thinking, the
wishful
dreaming.
thinking.
Yeah.
Little
so they have,
bread circles with sugar.
before
in
the
them.
military structure came into full control and power, though, we didn't tell this, because they were mediators. There wouldn't be as much of a need for a military power. But as the world changed, so did the halflings' government structure. So the diplomats actually held a higher tier for a longer time before that just kind of got pushed down as need for diplomatic and peaceful negotiation was less available. So it's actually kind of cool. They're one of the few cultures that actually has a shift in their government structure from their original creation because they had to adapt with the world and the needs of it. So I wanted to make sure I kind of pointed that out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh,
And then any kind of the civic stuff we talked about, because they'd have two major civic advisors that kind of ran Shota and ran the creation, because they very much regulate how much desert there is versus how much settlement. So you had to, if they needed another settlement or another outpost, because it would be more militaristic in nature, the civic advisors would talk to the generals, and there'd be 4 high generals plus the Acer. And they'd be like, hey, we're thinking about putting this here. How does this look? And they would look at the map, and they'd look at it from a strategical standpoint. Does this new settlement provide enough coverage with enough support? So almost like every settlement is like a parapet to a wall. And the settlements themselves serve as like early warning systems and guard towers to in any kind of conflict as they change from a diplomatic to a military nation. So their advancement was very intentional.
it was strategic.
Absolutely. Everything they do has a strategic purpose.
I think you talked about it on the Alpha episode again, that they did like emissaries, and they were the only.
That was the Semgatu. The Semgatu are the only ones that have embassies in every single nation.
Okay,
But
well then
there's-
we'll talk about that later.
There's
Yes.
a purpose for that. No,
Unless
if
you want to go back to space.
no. The Semgatu need to stay for the Semgatu episode, which I think is next, actually. Yeah, I'm fairly certain they're the next ones.
Ian, is some got to next?
I think it's Semgatu then Minotaur. But you would have diplomatic emissaries that would go out because conflict is going to reach the ears of the people, especially when you live on one massive continent and there's not a lot of like landmass. And then
Word of mouth travels fast when there's not water in the way.
exactly.
Yes, some got to or
Heck yeah.
Tuesday.
Awesome. Now we get to talk about
Thanks,
the
Ian.
bulls.
Oh man. Ah, the cats.
Cats. The cats and the bulls.
But I went to space again and I lost my train of thought. The halflings would send out diplomatic envoys or be sought out. You would have to send somebody to be like, hey, look, we're having conflict. We don't want it to erupt into war. Can you come mediate for us? And so they would be requested. And so you'd have to send somebody to the outskirts of the desert and then be received by a halfling patrol that would then, facilitate that request and dispatch a diplomatic envoy, which would be a militaristic monster as well. They wouldn't, you would not want to attack a small diplomatic envoy unless you wanted to die. Like suicide by halfling. Sorry, that was bad statement, but
the little
also
people
true.
Are coming. Run!
Don't mess with the little people.
Don't mess with them. And they never really had a conflict, as far as they don't have a little people complex. That's not the thing.
That's not what I mean. They're just short and terrifying.
Yes, but I'm just gonna make sure we put that out there as well. They're not frustrated because everyone's taller than them. They don't care.
Right.
The frustration came from everyone's failure to behave in a civilized manner.
Frustrated because I'm short.
And I think
at kneecap height. I can
a twisting of their divine purpose, because their divine purpose was to maintain peace, and because everybody's acting a fool, the only way to properly do that is to take over.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And so that would have been a dynamic, a twisting of their divine purpose, but they're warmongers because they believed that if they were in charge, they could manage well enough to pull it all off. Which is funny because when Duendelvin runs the world, when a halfling controls the world has the longest period of peace and advancement and all of that kind of stuff that the world ever experiences. The longest period of time where the whole world is at peace is under Duendelvin's rule. So technically, Sirona wasn't wrong thinking if we take over, we'll maintain peace better than anybody else does.
Duendelvin's really special.
Yes.
That's true, but Sirona could have as well.
And the halflings
I don't think Sirona would have done as good as Duendelvin, though.
There wouldn't be as much time. And that's the difference, is the halflings don't have that long lifespan. So you wouldn't have Sirona would have set up the regime, best way to put it, and then her progeny, or whoever was the most suited. Because it wouldn't be her it wouldn't be, she would be empress and all of her children would follow after. So it would avoid that entitlement and corruption to someone being spoiled and trained to be in that position, because you'd still have to earn that spot through conflict. And there was absolutely going to be conflict and rebellion. You can't ever make that go away.
Right. But if the Horakai hadn't stepped in at the end, if the underworld hadn't come up, it would have very much been Nyaquadia against Sirona head-to-head. And if Sirona had won that conflict, which I think...
It's iffy, because Nyaquadia had Clat
a
supporting
plan for everything.
But that not just the plan. She also had incorporated the orc support team. So it was she had more healing aspects, more support function on her end than Sirona did. But Sirona had, I believe, more racial passives available.
But I think because of their divine purposes, I think if it had been left to play out without, because they ended up turning to fight together. Mm-hmm. I think because of Nyaquadia's ability to plan and strategize, and Sirona's actual desire to maintain peace in the world, they probably would have coexisted with Nyaquadia as the head military advisor and Sirona as the empress or Asir of the world.
Yep.
I think the halflings and muskeperts could have easily joined forces in that moment.
Gotcha.
And I would argue, if you were to ask me how it would have played out, they would have made peace. Mm-hmm. And so you'd have Clat helping rebuild the faith. Nyaquadia would maintain all of the order and everything, and
she'll be able to predict rebellion before they ever actually arose. Her ability to modify and recognize the pattern. She'd have been a very bored person.
Right. And Sirona would rebuild the government system as a one government over the entire world system, and I think that would have been highly successful had it been done that way, and then the rest of the nations would have fallen suit. Because if the Horakai hadn't been involved by abducting all the children and everything like that, all the nations would have been able to rebuild. But we would have a halfling sitting at the top of it, like we do at the end of at the beginning of the Age of the Godless, and we would have peace.
Right. It's
Part of
true.
it with Nyakwadi, she would see a problem before it arose,
Exactly.
so nobody would be dissatisfied, because most rebellions are because someone is dissatisfied.
You can't have, especially because if you're a patriarchy underneath the objective rule of women, there'd be a desire to be able to fulfill that position, and if they couldn't create that position for you throughout your society, then you would be feeling like you can't fulfill your purpose.
Right.
And that would there would still be conflicts, but you're right. Nykawadi would be able to absolutely head a lot of things off without violence, but also be able to.
Stop it from ever becoming a huge problem.
Well, yeah, she could, because some people you just can't.
She could stop it before it became too big to handle.
Yeah.
Because
I think is what Corbin is saying.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
but there would still
but she
be,
didn't. She wouldn't fight Serona for the power.
She wouldn't see a point in it.
That's part of the. And we can talk about this a little bit. That's kind of part of the Samgatu function. Is they were designed to help, and we can talk this Tuesday. But they were designed to assist in all the other purposes for all the other races. So it makes sense why they would be able to coexist so well, because they were if you had a conflict with your own divine purpose, they would help you bounce off and kind of shore up what you couldn't see.
Yeah.
So yeah. Like our Samgatu, the reason they do what they do is because they are integrated and designed to be integrated into all races.
Yep. So
Yeah.
But yeah, it's huge. Any other questions there?
I'm running out of questions.
We didn't really talk about day-to-day life for them.
Oh, yeah,
you're gonna
day to day.
talk about the key players during the fall, or do we want to?
We already handled that.
Not a
We
big
talked
deal.
about mostly it's Serona, because she's the major player. And then she has her 4 generals, and she actually had a male general at one point in time that she was like, "Bro, you're terrible at this," and she kind of sacrificed them to the elves.
The elven fight.
let Yalik handle her light work.
You suck at this, but I can't say that, so go die.
He kind of got. She maneuvered him into a position where he felt like he had to make a grand gesture to show that he was worthy of what he did, and that inferiority, because it wasn't that he was a bad guy, he just always felt like he had a chip on his shoulder, and that chip is what drove him to have to prove himself all the time, and that's what led to his overall downfall of his small detachment of halflings, and that's kind of how
They wiped out by Yalik's earth explosion.
she petrified every single one of them.
Okay.
Yep. So that entire detachment of halflings was petrified along with the rest of the attackers. And the elves. That's how we kind of had the elves going down in the story.
Yeah.
Yep.
But, I mean, you have that, and then we have her 4 military generals were Khalees, Melendra, Athendra, who were sisters, and then Zelene. And, I mean, they all played a major part, while Serona just kind of kept to the head. But Serona was a lead from the front kind of person. She wasn't a sit back and watch it happen. Well, can't really lead from the front when you're shooting people in the face from a distance, but you get the idea.
She was in the fight.
Always.
She wasn't just watching.
Exactly. She was always in the fray.
She was always in the field, and she was always at the hardest part of the fight of the field. So whatever part of her military needed the most help, she would be there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So she would have been at Helm's Deep and at Gondor.
At the same time.
Well, no, not
No,
at the
they
same
happened
time.
at different times. But she
Impossible.
would have been in both of those conflicts.
There were 2 Seronas, and that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
That's too much.
The halflings would have 100% won.
Oh, yeah. That's like having 2 Nykawadias in the field. Like, why? No. Hard no. Hard.
Tunai Kawadia seems like overkill because one
It's sufficient.
is sufficient.
1 is sufficient, but 2 is superb.
I had to be superb because one does the work that both of them would do.
Because they can split the work and focus their attention more specifically on different things. So then you have all that brain power being split and divided and functioning in perfect unison at different problems with more focus. More terrifying. That's like taking more computing power and devoting it to one problem.
So it's like doubling your RAM.
You double, yeah. You double your pleasure and double the
That's-
fun.
You got more information
Neither
right
That's
gets
Tuesday.
now.
That's Tuesday. We also don't have 2 Serranos or 2.
Yeah, we don't
Nykawadi,
have that, so we're
It's
okay there.
That's what
Also-
you think.
In the comment section, if you have any questions,
Yeah.
please ask. If you haven't liked, comment, share, please do so.
But they also have their day-to-day is kind of fun because they would actually have military academy that you would go to train in. Their kids would start military drilling very early.
The girls would.
The girls would. Well, I mean, the guys also serve in the military. They just don't serve in the leadership roles as often. So
But and not as much because they're the homemakers, so
They're
they
the
would have
homemakers.
been like doing homemaker stuff,
Exactly.
cooking and cleaning and
the civics, making sure, taking care of everything,
Right.
making sure the supply lines were handled, providing that kind of. So they had major support to do that. So you'd still go to military academy to learn logistic structure. But every halfling a fighter,
So is it just like boot camp from day one?
kind of. It's
Yeah.
still like there's still be love and nurture, but just effectively like you learned how to handle because your life was short, so you grew quick, you adapted fast, and you were taught early. And I think part of that does too also come from that corruption of divine purpose that things became more militaristic, and so they went from learning how to understand and negotiate to this is
Learning
how
to
they fight,
conquer.
this is how we're better. Let's go kill them.
That reminds me of that one scene. It's just like, what's your superpower? I'm just basically better at everything.
I'm like you, but better in every way.
Oh man. Oh yeah. But that's their day to day. So they would wake up like obviously like kids would go play, but they wouldn't just be play military. They would go in military drill. Like, and if you were that would be their thing, or if you were like going to go and support, you would be taught not just how to cook for the home as a man. You would be taught how to prepare meals that had longevity, incorporate the berries into your function so that you could create effectively rations would be more of what they needed because obviously the berries sustains them.
So during that time frame, there wouldn't be such thing as a lazy halfling.
Heck no.
They got something to do all the time.
All the time because their life is too short.
Cram it all into the 80 years I got.
Exactly. Like we do it. We cram our life. Like we cram hard. A lot of us do because when we feel that need and that drive, we're like, let's go. And so there's not a lot of lazy downtime. Every now and again, yeah, you'd have some downtime, some family time, some chill time, but more often than not, I ain't got time for that. I don't got time to sit there and study the reason a thing exists or dive into magic. Who cares? I can throw a fireball at you, you're gonna die.
I don't care why the fireball. I just use
I
it.
just care that it does fireball.
Exactly. So you got this beautiful wind magic you taught me how to do it. I can cut you in half with it. Thanks. Don't care about anything else. Don't need to know why. Don't need to know how. Just
Use air.
that I
How
can.
we do it? I don't care. Slice.
Just don't care why. So
We don't have time for it. Pursuing craftsmanship? Nah, you guys got that. Just give me the
Goblins
goods.
have it.
right.
Yeah,
Take your
We're gonna
stuff.
protect your caravans going to and from. You'll
You
supply
pay
us with gear.
exactly. You pay us in gear.
You guys have the time and effort to do it.
Dwarves, you want to build something for us? Actually, the dwarves and the halflings, the dwarves developed, and the halfling, especially the first compound bow, for Sorona's concept. Like, they had compound bows that was lost to.
Was Serona just like one of the most intelligent halflings who kept making stuff? Because she
developed a technique.
she developed a technique, and then she also provided the idea for the compound bow.
It was necessary because she needed to be able to adapt her technique into a bow
I'm
that
not
could handle.
shooting far enough. Make it better.
Pretty much. And it's also tiring, and so she needed to be able to help people perfect the technique that she had developed for her lifetime. And so that compound bow would have been what allowed people to because it takes less.
Really
like
fast.
once you get to that draw point, it's because there's a lot of the power behind that. Like you actually have to develop your muscles to pull that draw. But the compound bow lets you hold
Yeah, but
for
when
longer.
you get that draw, it's not as
Once you get it locked
straining.
in, yep, you're able to hold that for longer and be able to do.
You don't accidentally shoot the orc in the face while they're telling you to hold.
All right, we're gonna throw some more Lord of the Rings references out there. Talking about Helm's Deep. Set off the Uruk-hai, not orcs. Uruk-hai,
Uruk-hai.
the fighting Uruk-hai. Very
The
different.
Ugly monsters.
The perfected
They were like
creation. They were orcs and humans, if I remember right. But that's
they were like
That's Lord of the
Space.
mud
Rings.
monsters.
space.
That's Tolkien.
Yes, Tolkien. Yeah, he's the father of all fantasy.
Tolkien's in space.
Just like Frank Herbert's the father of all sci-fi. Good stuff.
Thanks, Ian. So their gift from the council after the 1,000-Year War was the move after attack, and so they're the race, the only race that can essentially attack while moving. So like you don't have to pause and throw a fireball, or pause and shoot your bow, or pause and throw your spear. You can do all of that in motion.
Terrifying passive.
So, and the way it looks in the board game is you can move and then do your ability and then move
complete
again.
Yep.
But the essence of the idea behind it is they were the ones who like could literally be moving and shooting at the same time. For those of you who saw the movie Robin Hood, the new one,
Oh yeah,
with Taron Egerton, is that how you pronounce his name?
I think so. Him and Jamie Foxx.
And Jamie Foxx, the way that he shoots his bow in that movie, that would be on par with how the halflings operate.
Yeah, they definitely took a lot of modern inspiration as far as the way our military works with bows, because we always think of bows as plant, pull, shoot, volley. Yeah, you're
Right.
not really moving on. And so yeah, the halflings were just like you said.
An
They are
active
dead
one.
sprinting while they shoot you.
But that wasn't something that Serona developed. That was developed way before, and it was something that all of them did.
Mm-hmm.
Like their guardians literally could move in, block, attack, and move out of range, and somebody'd be like, "Oh, where do you go?" And so in our world, they were the ones that would have invented kiting,
Yes.
which, for
Is
those
a
of you who don't know
RPG
what
term
that
as
is,
well.
it's when you pull somebody away and you stay just out of range of them
And keep hitting them.
and keep hitting them and pull them, because there's nothing they can do. They can't keep up. They can't move fast enough. And so that's kind of their...
Yep. That's why the halflings getting the elven passive was such a big deal.
Right.
So they could move so
They could
much
move
'cause they're
faster.
fast.
Yep, and it set them into a better position for success. And I'm not gonna lie, like I think the halflings did as well as they did, were maximize their capability because the player of the halflings knew I need this.
But that's why they had to corner the elves.
Exactly.
Because the elves could move faster, so they had to...
Wait for them to be cornered.
Yeah. They had to initiate the fight in their own, so that the elves couldn't get away.
Now, granted, the elves were also not being played at the time, so that's kind of what happened to the elves as well. But
when we saw the other times, I have actually watched that happen,
outpaced by the elves.
outpaced a number of times. And so one of the times we played, we had somebody play the elves and somebody play the halflings, and they wanted each other's power. And because the halfling was able to kite them, they defeated the elves in that moment, took their power, and then just like dominated the whole rest of the game.
It's not an
So,
it's not an incapable thought. Yeah.
but
Or not an improbable thought. There we go.
Yeah.
Capable.
it's not
Right.
illogical to think
That's
that would
even
happen.
better.
They'd want to go after the goblins next and just to ignore terrain.
No, that's humans.
Goblins ignore weather events.
Yes.
I would go after the goblins, no matter which group I was in.
Because the blizzard is devastating and it sucks. And
Right.
honestly, every time I played the goblins in our board game, it's been really awful because I've never gotten the blizzard long enough to actually capitalize on it.
Only when you play it.
Only when
The
I
one
I've
time
seen
I
it-
played it,
I've
there was
seen
a
it
blizzard
happen.
right away.
Yep, everyone
And
else
it happened
like,
real bad.
I mean, that's
The
what
first
happened
time we played through, because the Muskeperts were
in a blizzard.
in a
effectively.
blizzard. They got caught in a blizzard, and there was only a couple of them left. And so the goblins were like, because they could hit them at range, they could move, they could do everything, and it was like they super capitalized.
Oh yeah,
So,
they played it smart.
but all right, what are we looking at on time, Ian?
I think we're like at 3 minutes left.
Okay, so we should probably wrap up.
Yeah, 2 minutes. All right.
All right.
Cool.
Heck
So,
yeah, we'll appreciate everybody's conversation and participation. Definitely, when we get the chance to do that like, comment, subscribe shenanigans. We'd love to be able to get the algorithm out there to more people because I think more people want to hear what we have to say.
So halflings are just like if you took a picture of a person and grabbed the corner and shrunk it.
We'll post a picture of us around.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, that'll be on the
Okay.
video,
And
and you
then
can
there
see.
will be a video.
One thing
Well, there will be
I-
a picture at the beginning of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
episode when it goes into the videos category.
Because we didn't talk about that. They are short, pointy-eared,
They're
muscular.
like short halflings.
Yeah.
Or
Half-
short short elves.
Short elves.
Short
With
muscly
darker
elves.
skin. Usually because they live in the desert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
A short halfling would be strange to see.
guess it would.
I don't want to see it. No, I don't like it.
So,
Midget halflings. No, thank you.
Yep.
No.
Why are you a foot tall?
all right. Well, we got to go.
Yep.
1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, Tuesday morning. We will be talking about
Muscovert.
my people.
Some got to, not
Some got
Some
to.
got to.
Your
Yep.
people.
My
Yep.
people. So we built the orcs based on what I liked the best, and when I took the test, go to Savarion.com, go to the bottom, take the test, find out what race you are. I'm a Muscopert.
No, we're doing this.
Or I'm a Samgatu. I'm a Samgatu.
Yep,
Came up.
Samgatu.
I was like, what?
the
I,
same
thought
thing.
it was an orc. I even built the orcs around my personality, and I came up with the test. And I designed the test too. So it's like, all right, well, I guess
it's
What-
fair.
What
I
is
guess
yours?
it's fair.
I'll give you one guess. Go ahead, guess.
Goblins?
No.
Dwarf?
Oh, yeah. Dwarven supremacy, baby.
All right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's funny. I'm
All right,
Minotaur
guys.
through and through.
We're excited to talk with them in the last end.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, guys.